We've seen every company talk about the jacuzzi. We've seen everybody talk about enjoying the sun deck and the yacht toys. So we've seen it all before. So that to actually try and pull in some of the emotions of enjoying a special occasion while you're on board with your family, it is a skill to try and build that emotion, because we can step so easily into that really cliched language, revolutionary and unparalleled. And it's a gap with storytelling. And this is why having experts on hand is really valuable for a brand.
You're listening to the Rising Tidecast, the podcast for sharing the stories, the lessons, and all the good stuff from legends in the marine industry. Welcome to another episode of the Rising Tidecast. I'm Steve Govil from Rising Tide Film, and today I'm super excited to have Rebecca Whitlock on the show. Rebecca is the founder of Antibes Yachting. It's a platform that showcases the vibrant yachting community in one of the most beautiful, iconic locations in the French Riviera. She's also a regular contributor to marketing forums and a freelance writer with a focus on luxury and yachting. You've been published in over 15 countries, which is amazing. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I'm really excited to chat to you today on the podcast.
I first found out about you because you're a key voice, I think, in the industry, and especially in the yachting sector. And right before this episode, I was doing some research and just saw on LinkedIn, you're the top 3% PR voice for the entire platform. That's crazy awesome.
Super happy about that. It was quite a surprise, actually. And I think that shows a lot with the content that I do try and put on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. And for me, it's a great platform for knowledge sharing and community and things like that. So it's nice to be recognized with a little badge like that from LinkedIn themselves.
It is awesome. And that's where I first saw you and your writing and found you. And, you're one of the people that when I saw, it must have been like a comment that you wrote or something, it immediately jumped out. And I was like, wow, who is this person? What do they do? And immediately want to follow them. And it's because I think the way that you convey your message makes your perspective and the message that you want to get out very visible to very many people. It's definitely a unique skill. And it's clear that you have a deep understanding and a very unique perspective too in the industry and how to market within it. So I'm curious because you've been writing for a long time. So take me back to the beginning. Like, how did you get your start? And then what drew you into this world where you are now, the yachting and luxury world?
Yeah, well, my now ex-partner, he was working as a bosun on super yachts, and my background, because I'm a Kiwi, so now based in southern France, used to be in the wholesale travel industry. So when I moved to France, it's such a big yachting community here that it naturally felt like a good transition. I had hospitality skills, the whole love of travel thing. And the community is very useful for word of mouth, for jobs and opportunities here. There's a lot of referral business happening here in Antibes, but actually the whole French Riviera and Monaco. So people know each other. And so that was a natural progression for me. Back in the day when I arrived here, day work was where it was at. So you'd have exactly what you have today. People are meet each other randomly at bars or wherever, and there'll be a captain who wants somebody for day work 2 days later. And so at that time, it was more approachable to get access to boats, because now you have the IYCA key, which is where all the big super yachts in Antibes are. There's a big gate across there. It's all security access. And so it's more restricted today than it was when I first arrived in France.
It does sound like it would be a little adventure walking along amongst all those super yachts back in the day without having to get through gates.
Yeah, I look back now to photographs of, all the big yachts that were there at the time, and you still see them today traveling around, and I think, that was one of the first super yachts I saw here in Antibes. And just photographs, obviously everybody wants a selfie next to octopus or something like that. And yeah, it's interesting because the access to the boats has changed and where you see them.
When you first got there, what were you doing? Were you writing at that stage or creating content?
I was doing interior work on boats as well, working with boats that were here in Antibes, and I was doing a lot of travel writing still. So outside of that, because I had a blog that I'd created, I was approached by charter brokers to start writing charter guides for them and blogs relating to them being at boat shows and things like that. It snowballed quite quickly because I sort of started pulling a lot of destination type information into the content because naturally that was my background coming from wholesale travel. And so it was quite unique because for the content that brokers were putting out at the time, it was very yacht specific and talking about the show itself. It wasn't talking about the destination and how clients and charter clients could go to a nice restaurant and recommend a golf course, that type of thing. So it was a really nice transition to be able to write content like that.
Great way to stand out too, because that, I mean, has to be the allure of owning a big yacht like that. And then a way to stand out when you're selling it too. I read something you wrote recently about selling not just the features, but the benefits. And that's a very powerful way, it sounds like, that you've guided your writing for a long time with.
Yeah. And I think, I just recently published something as well. And I said, I think there's opportunities in the industry for brokers to expand outside what they're doing when they're storytelling. I explained it as I like to think of it like going to a jewelry store because they're going to give you a beautiful diamond ring in a nice box. And, when you open it up, the ring will be in there, but they still put a nice ribbon on it. They give you the box and everything. And so yachting has to look outside of just that ring, the boat, and start to make clients want the ribbon and the unwrapping of that whole experience. And I think we focus so much on the hardware of yachting, the boat itself, that we need to sort of shift a little bit into the software, the emotions of what happens when you're on the charter, what happens when you're selling a boat.
Makes a big difference. I mean, it adds so much value as well to the whole ownership experience and to the brand as well, right? Because then the brand is seen not just as the company that makes this beautiful yacht, but enables their customers to experience all those things that when articulated really well and bring in all the senses, right? Then it's a whole different experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in the industry, we've seen every company talk about the jacuzzi. We've seen everybody talk about, enjoying the sun deck and the yacht toys. So we've seen it all before. So that to actually try and pull in some of the emotions of, enjoying a special occasion while you're on board with your family, that type of thing. It is a skill to try and build that emotion because we can step so easily into that really cliched language, revolutionary and unparalleled. And, it's a gap with storytelling. And this is why having experts on hand is really valuable for a brand.
Yeah, I don't know many people who felt a connection to revolutionary marketing.
Groundbreaking. Everything's groundbreaking.
Yes, yep. Well, so take me to when you started Antibes Yachting, because what was that transition and did it happen naturally for you or was it something that just evolved organically?
Well, I'd been freelancing at the time for a lot of companies and they'd given me feedback that they really enjoyed the process of working with me. I would say 95% of my clients are small businesses, so they have 10 employees or less. And it was sort of the situation where they were not in a position to have a full-time in-house marketing team. So they'd leave the Facebook post to the receptionist or the CEO would be sending out pictures for, an event they might be holding. And, they didn't have any structure to how to pitch for corporate sponsorship for a, charity golf day or something. So I naturally saw that there was a gap for PR and communication support for small businesses. And I found that from the feedback clients gave me, all the large agencies dealing with yachting were chasing big accounts. So they were going for the brokerages and the shipyards and people that were startups or, small businesses. They sort of fell in this no man's land in the middle where they didn't have marketing and PR assistants, or they didn't have the budget. So for me, I really wanted to launch something that was more community focused and it was at a reasonable price point. And, I thought that I could really give value to my client base because of my network with media, and I know a lot of suppliers here in the industry. So I actually launched Antibes Yachting during the pandemic, which was not ideal. I'd been planning to launch it and had the website all ready to go, and the pandemic hit the world. And I thought, this is really bad timing for me to launch a business. But I thought, if I don't launch it now, when am I ever going to launch it? And so I rolled out the website, launched it during the pandemic, and it actually worked out really well because what we saw was everything shut down. We had all the brick and mortar stores like yacht chandlers and, people that were supplying, they'd get foot traffic past their store selling yachting products, and suddenly they couldn't have any customers come and see them face to face. So I had inquiries from people who needed people to find them online. So the digital marketing factor just went through the roof. And, I think I signed like 35 clients in 2 months because people were falling over backwards, realizing how the hell do we do a Facebook ad campaign? And they still needed to, keep their business running during the pandemic, but they just didn't have the skills and the knowledge to reach customers that way online. So what was actually really ill timing actually benefited me in the end when I launched.
It's a perfect storm. When you, I think, go up against those adverse challenges, like the bigger the risk, sometimes the bigger the reward. And on the other side of it, it's fantastic to see what you're doing now. You said a couple interesting things that I hear a lot and see a lot is the kind of in-house marketing by the secretary part of things, which is super frustrating, I would imagine, as a small business owner. Maybe they don't put the value on it as being something that they need, or maybe they just don't have the priority there, I guess, at the time. What was your experience, almost like going into some of those small businesses and seeing that and then helping them? What some of those things that you saw from your perspective change when they get someone who gets the industry, it's actually their job to help with marketing, but not on the big scale, right? On a smaller scale that's manageable for a smaller business, to make a difference for them.
From my perspective, I've never met a CEO that loves to read a 25-page marketing report with all these KPIs and bar graphs about, data. They're just not interested and they just don't understand it. So I really wanted to bring back marketing strategies on a user-friendly level where people could understand it and they could read something that I'd posted on LinkedIn, or I could go into a boardroom and you could have everybody in that room understand how to do it. And, it's a process to actually strip that back, to try and explain things on a relatable level, because people get carried away with all the metrics and all the data. And while that's important, to actually get the job done, you just need a process of how to do it and who is responsible for doing that part. And regarding companies that, might get the receptionist to take care of the social media, the change that I've seen in marketing has been that a lot of the marketing roles inside companies, that they're not just doing marketing. They're asking for somebody who is a social media community manager and a videographer and has got skills with graphic design. And so it's a whole lot of roles that are actually pulled into outsourcing marketing as a term.
The one-man band that does everything. I mean, it has its time and place for sure, I think, for some businesses, but it's definitely not the ideal way to do it. And you've seen some of the help that you've given businesses. I guess what's one thing since starting on Antibes Yachting that you've done or that your business has done that you weren't expecting? Because I think we always find joy in the little things that you realize down the road that, wow, this is pretty awesome. I had no idea this was going to turn out like this.
I've realized that I've become a resource for other businesses for their own marketing, and whether they're a client or not, I do have people approach me at boat shows and say, oh, I've seen your stuff on Facebook, or we're using a few of your tips. And that's fine. I'm cool with that. I'm happy that it's helping someone else's business grow. And, I do have people that say, look, we're just a startup. When we get a budget, we'll come back to you. You're like top of the list. So for me, being a resource and recognized as a resource locally is great. And I've also been able to use my profile to help causes here, like the Antibes lifeboat. I put out a few posts on social media about that they needed equipment, and literally, you get donations of fire helmets and ropes and someone to come and check their oil on board. And it's things like that really do, at the end of the day, you understand the impact, that you're not just getting up every day and dealing with marketing strategies and PR, you're actually impacting a lot of other businesses along the way.
That's very special. Well, I guess probably in your personality, I would imagine you wanting to help people in the way that you write things. I can tell it's a very helpful tone, whether it's educating other people or sharing a perspective that's a really fresh idea or something people would love to hear. I think it's all helpful, super helpful.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm open to feedback too. So sometimes I have people outside of yachting who come to me and say, we're a hairdresser and we've seen something on Facebook about, growing your brand and putting in a strategy. So we're going to use that for our business. And for me, my target client is not hairdressers, but it's nice that they can take something from something that you've posted.
I was looking at your blog post lately. The last one I think that you wrote was one about content tips, which was awesome. I really loved that. And it shared a lot of great tips that I took away. But the last sentence that you wrote in the article stood out to me the most. Mm-hmm. And it was, in the yachting sector, we're so accustomed to hyper editing to perfection, but the world won't stop turning if you publish content that's not 100% polished every single time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I struggle with a lot, like the perfectionism, the analysis paralysis, I'm just going to do one more take that turns into 37 more takes. And it's also because I think I'm personally looking for that last 5%, those little things that make a big difference, that get results and, set some content apart, but it's not always like that. So I'm curious, from your perspective, being someone who's super dialed in with your written content, how do you apply that principle to what you do?
We're our own worst critics, as you say. I always listen to audio of myself and think, I cringe at my Kiwi accent on podcasts or interviews.
Sorry. Yep.
And then I listen to
you sound great, by the way.
Of other Kiwis online. I think, actually, I sound all right. So I think we're always naturally critical of our own performance or our own writing, that type of thing. And I have occasions where I read something that someone else has written in the industry, and I think, God, that's so good. I wish my name was on that byline, because it really is fantastic. And I think once you get beyond that imposter syndrome, which is really hard, it's challenging every single day, and you just start making content. At the end of the day, no one really cares if you haven't shaved for 2 days, or, you've got mismatched colored clothes on or something. It's still the messaging at the end of the day. And I remember back to last year, I thought, I'm just going to run a really quick series of videos, just super short, 1 minute or less, film it on my iPhone about marketing leading up to boat shows. And I literally just did that. And it was nothing fancy, on the iPhone. And they did really well. I had so much feedback and engagement on them. They were not, professionally edited. They weren't fancy in any way. I had no super yacht in the background. And, I think I probably didn't even wear makeup for half of them, but life goes on. And people really connected with it, because the message that I was sharing in the videos was actually more important than the way I was, sharing it.
And I think authentically you is one of those key things, right? And then also, like, actually having share-worthy content to share is another big thing. When you write on LinkedIn, is that usually your first draft, you have a look over it, and then you hit publish? Or what does your process look like, I guess? Because it seems so refined, and I know that's skill that's built over the years, but I'm curious as far as like tips that you could maybe share with people who are looking to write something that's more them, but also a little bit more refined and impactful. What does that look like to you?
Well, regarding writing, I always think first and foremost is researching your audience and what will appeal to them. Because what happens is we see a lot of copycat marketing and content in yachting, and people think, oh, this person's had this amazing engagement or they've had something, and we just want to replicate that 10 times for the next year kind of thing. And it's not actually what their target client wants to read or will respond to. So researching audience is huge, and the feasibility of a topic, because I think it's great to brainstorm topics with a client, but you also need to be able to push back when they have like a really crappy topic. Because I have a client I work with and he's left field. He comes up with these really bold ideas, and we've gone with them because they're so left field that they're different to anything else the industry is seeing. And he said to me, I've never had anybody say to me, yeah, let's go with that, and we're going to tune it into yachting. And I said, well, everybody else is writing 5 hottest charter spots in Turkey, or, hottest beach clubs and St. Bart's. I said, and you're going to put this out, it's going to probably divide opinion. It's going to get a little bit of backlash from technical people and crew and captains, but at the same time, it's, well researched. You've got factual data in there. You've got things that are your opinion. So you've got to expand on topics like that. Research your audience, but, try and be authentic to your company and your personality. As a copywriter, I have to try and tap into that every day. The different personalities of brands, the tone. I do a lot of writing for UK clients and US clients. So you've got to be aware of how to communicate with different audiences and what they tune into, because those cultural nuances are so important. And that's something that will always be happening. You'll always have that, but you need to be able to really draw on that when you're writing something for an audience that gets them to react, basically.
I love the ability to be a chameleon in your writing. I commend you for that. That's definitely an art. It's fantastic, I think, what you were saying about the one guy that you work with that's a bit left field, because it's like that polarizing content is really what draws in your people, and being not afraid to make a stand, whether it's an opinion or a weird, quirky thing that's totally you, draws the right people to you. Sometimes, as long as you have somebody in your corner, I think, that's looking out to make sure it's still in your best interest. But
yeah,
what else you said about working in a global audience, but being able to speak their language, that's something that I also think is very fascinating and super important, because from my side of the content side of things, where living in Australia, a lot of people and boat brands, and especially dealerships here, they're now really understanding the importance of local content, of stuff that people can actually connect to. That's not flying an American flag out of the back, trying to sell to someone in Sydney. Just doesn't make sense. And people don't connect with that. And so I think for you, your work is on a global stage, right? You publish in all these different countries and you work with many people. And knowing that local content is something that's super important for what you put out there and for the companies. What role do you think local content plays in successful marketing? And how do you end up balancing the global audience with local knowledge? Because that's something that I think you specialize in too.
I mean, I 100% agree. I think local content is so important for brands to get a foothold in their market where they are, not just for geolocation, search online and all that type of thing, but you really do need to have people on the ground who know the companies, they know the marinas, they know the shipyards, they know all the suppliers. And when you have somebody that is based in that location, they're always going to have, a jump start on somebody that's across on the other side of the world. As an example, I had a company contact me and they wanted me to write about sailing in Greece. And, that's perfectly fine. I mean, a project I could have taken on and signed immediately, but I actually know somebody who is an expert at Greek sailing. And so I referred the project to her because for me, it made sense to have somebody that was truly passionate about that and an expert in that particular content than to me to spend more time researching it, maybe wing it a little bit, go back and forward with the brief. And, it was something that she could have done with her eyes closed. And I think you've just got to realize sometimes you're a good fit for a client and sometimes you're not. And having a network that is global, I'm more than happy to refer someone that's in the States for a project that's over there rather than me get on a plane, have to fly over, do a project there if I don't have to. If there's someone I know that's capable and it's not clashing with, what I can bring to the project, then why not? I think it also comes back to understanding your audience, because local content and international content, again, you have those cultural nuances, you have cross-cultural communication that you sometimes have unseen elements of people that are living in those destinations. A classic example was I had a US client wrote a press release for the French market and sent it over for proofing, and it was just completely the wrong tone. And, we had to immediately go back to them and say, you cannot release this. You need to edit this to be more targeted towards the French market. And so knowing your audience is such a big thing, but the local content 100% has to be in that content mix. Definitely.
Yeah. The tone, even the small things, is something that's so key in especially writing and narrative work. You said knowing your audience is one of the huge, I guess, key tips in creating something that actually resonates and sticks. To help brands maybe writing their own content, how do you approach that? Or what tips would you give when they're starting besides researching the ideal clients that they're trying to talk to?
People see content online and it registers with them. And I think I really like that. Everybody's got their own little hit sheet of content that they love, and it's inspiring ideas, and they read it and they think, oh, that really made an impact on me. And I like that tone of that content. So other than the feasibility of the topic, I also think people should think about not just creating the content, but the way they're going to distribute it and promote it. Because you could create an amazing video, you could create an amazing case study, but if it just goes on your website only and you've got no promotion or distribution, how are people finding it? If they can't find it, they're not going to read it, they're not going to get inspired, they're not going to share it. And, once they're sharing that content, then they become potential to be a lead and then a paying customer. And so it's not just a case of content itself being created. You've got the distribution, the promotion that needs to come into that strategy. So it's more holistic, that people need to think about it over its lifetime. And in the super yacht sector, I would say companies are really, really great at the awareness stage of getting people to the customer journey, but the rest of it can slip away a little bit. And so you've got to be pushing it out in places that your target client is going to be, whether that's a forum or you've got a brand ambassador that will push it out to you, or put your content where there is associations or people that can promote that and support what you're doing and get behind your messaging. Because if you're, running a small business like myself, there's a lot of avenues you could use for promoting your own business, whether it's paid advertising or just, sending out a newsletter. And there's no golden strategy for what works, when it works, who it works for. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have in marketing, is people have to be realistic about what can be achieved and the timeframes. Because I feel that when I approach companies and have those initial discussions with them, so much of the initial feedback is, so how many followers are we going to get on Instagram in the first 2 weeks? And they think, oh, we need to have 50,000 followers to have this amazing, successful business. And it just doesn't work like that. The reality is much different, and digital marketing has so many elements to it that sometimes when you're speaking to a potential client, they're quite surprised about all the factors that can pull it together like a puzzle. So I think to enhance their storytelling for that, they really need to look at the whole journey of the strategy, not just the creation.
So true. And you know what? Like the content distribution part of things, if you could spend all the money in the world, if the people don't see it, then it's fallen flat and it's a waste. And I think reverse engineering almost what you want to get out of it is a great place to start. It's always what we start with, the end goal in mind, right? And you know what you said too about, oh, the most common question about how many followers are we going to get? Like the platform's changing all the time, right? Now, you don't even have to have nearly the volume of follower, the amount of followers to actually be seen as someone who's legitimate or whatever it is, the vanity metric, like that doesn't matter nearly as much anymore. And they're always changing. So I think ensuring that strategy from the start is not about those vanity metrics and it's about something greater, a goal for the business is a great approach. And sounds like the way that you approach that in making strategy reports and documents that are easy to understand for everyone, that's a fantastic way to find what really matters for the business and get everyone on board.
And, I make it quite clear, I think, when I send proposals to my clients, I tell them straight up, you are not going to be getting a 25-page marketing report from me. It's just not going to happen. I'm just coming with you with what's working. And if it's not working, we change it and adapt. And I've never had anybody push back against that because at the end of the day, they need to see, is it working? Is it working within the budget? Is it quality work? Is it bringing us customers? So all of the fine-tuned little things, it's like the Matrix. They don't need to see all of the stuff going on in the background. They just want to know if they're getting the results that they've asked you for.
How do you define those? Like, because that's a big thing in the distribution part, like we spoke about. So when you go in with a company and you sit down for that first meeting, planning the strategy out, what are some of those questions you ask that maybe people could ask themselves about what is it that we want to achieve and what are we going to align everything we do to get there?
Yeah, I would say that 9 out of 10 companies that I approach that are small businesses, they don't have any in-house systems for marketing whatsoever. So if somebody that is taking care of their marketing activity currently is sick or on holiday, it just gets left to the tumbleweeds and they just pick it up when that person gets back. So just trying to put in place systems. What systems do you have in place? What processes? Do you have onboarding guides? So if that employee leaves the company, can someone else step into their role and who is training them? And outside of the strategy, it's all those initial processes that you need to find out what's happening. And a big part of that as well is what tools are they using? What systems do they have in-house? What subscriptions and channels are they actually paying for already? And what value are they getting? I've had loads of customers who've signed up for these CRM systems and they don't use them properly and they're paying a fortune, and then they say, oh, it's not working. Well, it's not working because you're not using it. You don't know how to get the benefits out of the system. So it's not because the system's broken. You need to make sure that you're educated how to use those tools correctly. And so, being a freelancer, I've had to work on projects where you step into a company temporarily for, 2 months, 2-month project or whatever. And they've got 10 different tools that they use to schedule and manage their social media and content. And the value of being a freelancer where you're working with different clients is you get to upskill on so many different tools. And that's probably what I love the most. And the value of being able to go to a company and they say, do you know how to use this, this, this? And you say, yeah, I know how to use all of those really well. The time value that you have just given that business is immense because they don't have to train you on every single tool or platform or channel to get you up and running. And then before you know it, half the project time has been sucked away just with training a temporary employee. So I think upskilling and staying abreast of different technology that is happening in the industry is super important. Yeah.
I think there's big value in simplifying things, like you were saying, whether it's your message or the process or the amount of tools you use. I think when you can find that sweet spot and ask around, like there's so many people, you talk about network, like this is a fantastic industry for sharing valuable things. Most people I've met are not gatekeeping anything. It's like, what do you use? How do you do it? Let me know and I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. And I think companies, there's huge opportunities for them to actually trust the experts that are in those roles. Because what I see is videographers and I see graphic designers and media people, and they get pushback from inside companies from people who don't understand the role and the specifics of how they get the results. So, just as an example, I had an article that was written and it went off to the client and there were 8 people that had to sign off the article. And when you have barriers in the way which actually hold up a project because nobody has been allocated that management decision making process, it delays everything. So if it's delaying one article, then it's delaying the videographer setting up for the 2 days that it's forecast to be great weather on the boat. And it's understanding the role that people play and trust the experts that are working on the project. If you've got someone that is really super skilled at communication and dealing with media, let them get on with their job. They know what they need to do. If there's a videographer, they know what equipment to bring. They know how long it takes to set up the yacht toys for a photo shoot. I think it needs to be stripped back. So
100%. And I think the too many chefs in the kitchen thing not only delays things, but it dilutes the message sometimes, because unless you have that one voice for everyone else, the trusted voice within the company, then everyone has a say. And then all of a sudden it's lost its value and its impact. And so having a trusted, whether it's someone internally or an advisor like yourself, like bringing in an expert that gets the brand is the big thing, I think. And then that gets the messaging, and like your chameleon adaptability can speak the language and understand the brand. Like that's invaluable as far as time goes and impact of the content that you're putting out.
Definitely. And I think it's so important that if I'm writing something on behalf of a brand or creating content on behalf of them, that it's so tuned into their brand personality, because I do see things that are written online and I read it and I think that is nothing like that person at all. And it's really clear that they've had someone do their LinkedIn post or they've had someone create their video and, they've put this like R&B music over it where someone's swearing and it's gone onto this CEO of a broker's TikTok page or something.
Not a good look.
It's not a good look. So it has to really sync with that person. So if you meet that person in face to face, they're 100% exactly how their profile is and online everywhere, because sometimes there's a mismatch and it's a bit awkward.
It definitely would be a bit awkward. I think that's a big way to emphasize the point that the niche specialty, working within someone who gets this industry, whether it's a freelancer or someone who's been in it for years, like not only do you speak the language on the tone, you get the brand, you get the terms, but you have your finger on the pulse with all the other stuff that's out there. And you say, oh yeah, I've seen this doesn't work, or this is not how we speak. And you can be not only like an asset for businesses, but come in as an advisor with an expertise that is much more broad than if you just had somebody in-house that was working at the same company for that long, right? Because it is great to understand the one brand, but I think it's also great to understand the industry as a whole from an outside perspective and work just almost as closely with the brand as you would being in an in-house position.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I feel that sometimes when you're working in that corporate environment, you're so close to your own product or service that you can't see the gaps, you can't see the obstacles. So having someone from outside come in, they don't have any liaison with the corporate politics in the office. They don't care if Bob doesn't like Sally from admin, that we just literally come in, get given the brief and get on with the job.
Mm-hmm.
And
get it done.
Having that perspective can be like fresh, and it makes businesses realize, okay, we could try this or we could do it a different way, or that hasn't been working, so let's try another way. I have had experiences in the past where I get called onto projects and a company has literally just been chugging along for 6 months to 12 months prior to that, just doing the same thing and getting the same results, and then they have a bit of a whinge about it when they come to me and go, oh, this hasn't worked and this hasn't worked because of this, but they've not changed anything and they've not had anybody who's actually brought that to the forefront and said, well, you've been doing the same thing that's not working for 12 months.
Beating a dead horse at that stage.
Yeah, exactly. Chewing through your budget without having anybody taking accountability for it. So, yeah, I think that's important. And for yachting, it's really vital that we're looking at other industries as well, because yachting can be really traditional, it can be really insular. We don't share our marketing strategies or communication strategies that often. And there are some really great things happening in other industries. And we can pull a lot of that from the people that are in the industries, from the processes that they use, and also from the creative that is in other industries. I was at Cannes Lions a few months ago, completely not related to yachting, but there were some fantastic takeaways about creativity and using, AI for ethics and things like that. And it was nice to attend an event where people weren't afraid to rock the boat with what they said to the audience.
The marine industry has always been a little bit behind as far as innovation, especially in the marketing side of things. But I don't know, like maybe it's just me, but I feel like it is changing a little bit. Like a lot of the companies that maybe I'm speaking to are being a bit more open to trying new things. And especially with the content that's being made, like I think it is getting a little bit more diverse than what it always has been, which is really fresh and really nice to see, to come in kind of at this stage in the journey of the industry. When you started Antibes Yachting to now, you've been in it for quite a few years and in the industry for longer. You talked about helping people a lot. It's an awesome thing to drive you and what you do every day. Can you think of a memorable story from your career so far that stands out to you where you had a significant impact on someone?
I would say even myself, because I was super proud. I had 4 original articles I wrote in the Monaco Yacht Show Summer magazine. And so for me, that was a massive boost for self-esteem because, growing up in New Zealand, I never would have imagined I'd have something published as a freelancer and something that was so front and center at a major show like that. So it just kind of reinforced to me that you can just be bold, back what your abilities are, and just take a few risks as well. I pitched them the ideas for the topics and it just went from there. And so, yeah, it was super nice to have a byline there with all these other really established journalists and people in the industry and media. So I think, yeah, that was quite memorable for me.
That's awesome. Definitely a boost in the confidence in and your clout in the industry. But what did it do, I guess, after you had those published? Did anything change about your business?
Yeah, I got a lot of feedback, obviously, from other freelancers and other media who were really interested to work with me after that. But I think more than anything, it affirmed to other people that, I'm capable to actually publish in a range of media. You don't have to be an employee working for a big corporate brand. So, yeah.
Do you think as a freelancer, getting your work published, how much does that play into getting new work? Or do you think it's more about the quality of your work that maybe you share or your pitch or your network? Like from your perspective, getting new work, what does that look like as far as the level of importance of the different things?
Overall, the process and how it looks today is so different from years ago when I started. And I think back to when I first started, I started a blog when my eldest son was young and it was filling a gap completely unrelated to yachting. It was sort of a side project. And I think when I started writing that, I was writing it for other parents who were looking for family-friendly activities on the French Riviera. So for me, that was the quality of the writing came from that audience. And so I think if you write for an audience that you love and you're passionate about serving, the rest comes.
Finding your passion is something that I think you know it when you found it, and it instantly, everything that you do feels right. I'm fortunate that I think I've found it in the last few years in this industry and doing what I do. It's taken me a little while to get here. I'm very thankful for the journey to here, but it does make a difference. Like, people get it. Like, as soon as they meet you, they're like, oh, this guy loves it. He does it. He like, this is his jam. And they want to work with you because they know you're going to put the extra effort in. They know that it comes from a different place of just ticking the box and this is a job, right? It's a different level of, I think, experience for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think when your business is driven from genuinely wanting to help the client rather than just ticking a box and earning income. I mean, it's nice to earn income, it pays the bills at the end of the day, but we still have to work on projects that excite us. There's projects I turn down because I just am not interested in them, or they're not, they don't turn the wheels for me. They don't excite me. They're not interesting enough for me. But they're probably fantastic for someone else. And I think as long as you're still passionate about what you're doing and the client and the projects that you're bringing to life, then it naturally evolves anyway.
You said earlier you were passionate about new technology. And I guess what's coming out now? Is it apps that you love, or what's new and exciting for you right now?
Well, obviously, AI is a huge impact on marketing, not just our industry, but pretty much everywhere at the moment. So seeing that evolve and, the changing tools and how it's impacting creativity and also productivity is something that is right in the face of everybody that is working in marketing and communications and creative in the super yacht sector. And, there's a few gaps in the industry regarding ethics and ownership of content just in general. I mean, we see a lot of content that are, videos and photos shared in the industry and nobody credits the photographer or the videographer. And it's, it's this plague of ownership of creation, really, that I think the industry could probably improve on. So AI is definitely going to be shifting, it's going to be evolving, it's going to be stepping into our jobs more and more and more. And so I think that's something that everybody needs to upskill for, to get comfortable with. There's a certain amount of people who work in creative roles who are like, we're very anti-AI. We're not going to use it, don't want to touch it, don't want to get involved with it. And you do see a lot of repetitiveness, especially for copywriting and yachting. I can spot an AI-written post super fast. So I think that's just a few crinks in the armor that need to be refined a little bit. And it's a skill base that the next generation will be on top of it, because we're all sort of just been thrown into the fire, so to speak. And I've learned a lot over the last 2 years, tested a whole bunch of tools, of apps, of platforms for myself and for clients. And there's not one tool or app that I've found that is perfect. Everything needs it to be refined. It needs to be reviewed. So it's evolving, but it's exactly the same. We had iPads and iTunes and everything, and CDs come out, and people always looking for the next best thing. But regarding marketing, I definitely think AI will stay in the mix for a while. And I think there'll be more focus on voice search. So it's not really something the industry is really talking about, but there you go. You heard it here first. Keep an eye on voice search, because it's going to be a big place for everybody. Sort your websites out, all of your content online, because I think voice search is going to be pushed right up there for marketing.
100%. Like, now that some of the assistants, like if you have an iPhone, Siri is actually usable somewhat with a new iOS, and then ChatGPT going to the voice and video search, like, yeah, that is an essential. And from when ChatGPT first came out, it's funny speaking to a copywriter, because that was the one thing I was like, oh my God, I can finally write something or get help writing something that sounds somewhat, but in reality, it doesn't sound like you at all. But it's a great tool, I think, for brainstorming or getting the wheels rolling. And if you don't use AI, you're going to be left in the dust. That's just how it is. It's adapt or die, I think is the saying. But even for the creative side of things, like making a stand that you are not going to use it, I think is a bit silly in certain ways because number one, a lot of the programs that we use for creativity are like fully amazing compared to 2 years ago from the introduction of AI tools that aren't text typing, tell me an answer, but just the efficiency at getting things done is fantastic. And where I see this going from my side of things is getting better at becoming a prompt engineer of whatever it is that you do. Because for me, like it saves so much time in pre-production now. I can create a custom GPT or sign up for one, and I can have it learn the way that I like to do things and structure a story and feed it an interview or a narrative, and it'll give me all these options. Some of them, yeah, probably would have done, some maybe not, but some I wouldn't have thought of that are better than what I would have done. And I think just having it as a little assistant next to you, not producing all the work, but your little buddy next to you, I think it's invaluable. Like I get so excited. I use it every day. I think it's awesome.
You're right there. Anybody that's discounting AI in its place in the industry for communication is they'll be left behind because it's already progressed so fast. And I use ChatGPT as, an example that what is being created today, you're putting a lot of the creation on the plate of companies themselves rather than outsourcing to copywriters or marketing. And when ChatGPT came out, there were a lot of copywriters who said, we're going to lose our jobs because now AI is going to take over and write all these things. And that's not been the case because we're actually still getting approached to refine copy, to edit copy, to improve it, to come up with base foundation ideas and things that aren't actually that AI doesn't have that base resource knowledge for the super yacht sector because it's always been so insular that they can't find marketing articles online or they can't, that type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great to see it progressing. Are our jobs at threat? I don't think so just yet.
I think your experience and the depth of knowledge you have in the industry and the passion for what you do is going to extend that time horizon well into a time that you have to be worried about it. I'm curious, how do you use it now? Like from a copywriting perspective, what's your like favorite use case of ChatGPT?
I mean,
that's not offensive. That's not offensive to posting.
Obviously ideas for content, so everything from social media to storylines for things, and then just it's more a foundation base because there's not one result, even with prompt engineering, and you can really refine it and be so specific that you think, I'm going to take that 100% as it is and roll with it and publish it. You always have to tweak it. You always have to refine it. But as an idea generator and a base for starting the creative process, I think it's fantastic, definitely. And as you mentioned, the productivity side of it saves so much time with that. And, there's always going to be elements where people will contact you. They'll say, look, we need this done for such and such boat show. AI can never replicate that. They can never pull together 10 editors to do, one specific thing. So you always need that human factor overriding anything that is, AI generated.
I'm excited to see where the future goes. That is for sure, though.
Might have to do another interview if
that's right.
at least
you'll just be talking
would turn out.
Yeah, you won't be talking to my AI bot, I promise. It'll really be me. Becca, I've got some rapid fire fun questions for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, hope so.
First answers that come to your mind, and we'll keep it short and sweet if you can. What's your favorite yacht you've ever been on and why?
My favorite yacht I've ever been on would be Artifact. Just beautiful interiors, love the design, the story behind the craftsmanship on the yacht was really exceptional. So that would be it, Artifact.
I love it. What's the most memorable location you've ever written about?
Oh, lots of them, but probably Aitutaki in the Cook Islands. I had to
Sounds
visit there
wonderful.
in person just to make sure it was amazing.
Well, that's where the experience comes in. That's perfect. I like this excuse to go there. It's perfect. That you didn't hand that off to a colleague, did you? No.
Not that one, no.
What is one must-have thing on a yacht?
Definitely yacht toys. I mean, I wouldn't be going anywhere near a yacht unless it had a full arsenal of fun yacht toys. Definitely.
What's one thing most people don't know about the yachting industry? Common misconception.
I think people think, we're really pretentious, we're a little bit snobby, unlimited budgets for champagne. There's all this glamorous lifestyle that's built around yachting, when actually, to be honest with you, most people are down to earth. They're building up their businesses, they're very approachable, and just want to see the best out of the industry and surrounding themselves with just positive news stories, really.
I like it. What's a book or an article that's inspired you recently?
Well, not so much inspired me, but a book I read recently was Banksy's art, and it was about all his inspiration behind the artwork that he leaves everywhere, and so that was super interesting to read. Not related to yachting at all, but yeah.
I like it. Well, you find inspiration everywhere, don't you?
Yeah.
What's one luxury that you can't live without?
Well, coffee. Definitely coffee. It has to be. And I have this quirky little thing, and I'll show you now. Whenever I travel, I always get, this one's from Portugal, but I always get an espresso cup whenever I travel. So I have a little collection of loads of coffee cups.
I love it. That's awesome. Going to need a new china cabinet soon.
So that's my luxury coffee.
What's the strangest thing you've seen on the water?
Actually, last year at Cannes Yachting Festival, there was the BMW, I've forgotten the name of it right now, but that was pretty crazy to see in person.
On the
when
water.
it was going past. Yeah, that was, it was definitely a head turner. So
That's wild. Do you have a hidden talent?
yeah, I'm really good at bad karaoke. So, that kind of karaoke at 2 a.m. when everybody's a little bit tired and wants to go home, and I'll just get up and sing Mustang Sally or something like that.
That's where you shine. I like it.
Hidden talents.
Memorable at the end of the night. That's perfect. If you could write a book for outside of yachting, what would it be about?
I would love to interview David Attenborough about his passion and his joy being connected with the natural environment. That would be top of my list, definitely.
I would read that. Definitely. What is something that you've failed at, but are glad that you did?
Okay, so I'll tell you a little story. Years ago, I had an idea for a product in yachting, and I spent so long on a feasibility study for it. I literally researched everything that could be barrier to entry, to all the challenges, researching into funding options, everything. And I just invested so much time because I was obsessed with it being perfect when it launched. And in the meantime, someone else had the funds and the resources to develop, but essentially that product, and they did. So it taught me a really big lesson to just go for it and to launch and not focus so much on those small details, because you can always refine something and change it once it's out there. And you've just got to get started, because I got really affected by that for a long time, because it was actually me holding my own project back because I was obsessed with it being so detailed and so perfect. So yeah, that will probably be something that happened that went pear-shaped, but I'm happy it happened, because now it's made me realize, don't sit back and take forever to get moving on an idea.
I love that. It goes hand in hand with your content. Just put it out there as well. I was going to ask how you want to leave us today, but that was pretty great.
That was a few questions to try and answer, quick fire questions.
Definitely a brain quiz. I'll ask you one more. Thinking about everything that you've done in your professional life over the last however many years, what is, you think, the best investment that you've ever made in yourself?
Definitely realizing that I'm capable to launch my own business and, just steamrolling ahead with getting my website launched and all my social media underway. It's important to realize that if you're a company owner, everybody starts at zero. Nobody's going to have 100,000 followers instantly. And, I look back now to when I first started and I think, I had like 0 followers on, Instagram, or nobody was reading my website. I had no website visitors until you launch. And you look back to a few years along the track and you think, actually, I've done okay. I've progressed so much and now here's the results. So I think for me, investing in my own knowledge and constantly, being able to improve what I'm offering for my business by launching my website and getting my product out there, because that was a really definitive stage of going online, and then it was public. And I thought, right, here we go. We're now in the game, so to speak. Yeah.
It's fantastic to look back, I think, and take time to schedule it in and look back and see where you've come and where you're going to go for the next 5 or 10 years. And so what can we expect from you in the next 5 years? What are we going to see you doing 5 years from now? Definitely have a few more page visits on the website.
I mean, I'm keeping things a little bit under wraps because I'm working on a few projects, especially for next year. So I have, connections within film and sports. So tied in with yachting, might be seeing more of me linking these industries together.
I love it. It's part of the network that you've grown, being able to do that stuff. And I guess the power of actually getting it all done and having the ideas to make it happen and doing it, right? Launching it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think once you know the balance is knowing what your strengths are and what, resources you can bring to the table, and anything else outside of that, there's always going to be someone else that you can call on or recommend or refer or work with. I think due diligence is so important in the industry because there's a lot of sharks that are out there trying to get a foothold into someone that's more established. So, I work really closely with people who have been in luxury or yachting, or they've worked with other clients that have recommended them from, other industries, and not just pop-ups who are trying to get a foothold into a product. So I think that's really important to keep moving forward. And, you've got to adapt as a business owner.
Yeah. Great words to live by. I love it, Rebecca. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and chatting with you. And I really appreciate your insights and perspective. I always look forward to seeing your posts on LinkedIn, and it's wonderful to finally put a face to the name and the amazing words that you write.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I think I've just put out a public message to everybody if they need a karaoke partner at 2 a.m.
You know who to call.
Next
Sweet Caroline.
Like a line of people.
Rebecca's coming for you. That's perfect. Well, if you want to sing with Rebecca or check out her work, make sure you head over to Antibes Yachting and follow her on LinkedIn. You definitely won't be disappointed. And you're on all the platforms too, right? And sharing your expertise. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Steve.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And I'd love to hear what you found super inspiring and invaluable. And if you know somebody as great as Rebecca in the industry, send them my way and share this with them. I'd love to have them on the Rising Tidecast. Catch you guys on the next one.